notes too well that I wouldn't be able to get it down. So I would need a nonfiction ghostwriter to help me write it.
There we go. I'm in. Hi, I'm Kyle Weckerly, certified professional ghostwriter. I'm glad you're listening as I welcome industry experts to share stories of lessons learned the hard way, overcoming professional hurdles, turning experience into actionable knowledge, and how to connect with your target audience. This is the Career Challenges Podcast. Welcome to the Career Challenges Podcast. My guest for this episode is Cyn Balog, young adult author and fiction ghostwriter. So Cyn, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So first off, you're a young adult author, and we'll get into that in a second, but I'm a ghostwriter. I do a lot of business books, a lot of business writing. A fiction ghostwriter, at the onset, it may be easy to assume that we do kind of the same thing when it comes to ghostwriting, but that's probably not true, is it?
It is in a sense, it is the same. I mean, we're writing books for other people, so I guess in a sense it is the same, but pretty much there's a lot of differences. Whenever I see a nonfiction ghostwriter, they usually wind up taking a long time to discover a lot of, having interviews and doing things like that. With fiction ghostwriting, that is not the case. The whole schedule is basically different. So I can write a fiction manuscript in a period of maybe 1 or 2 months. It depends on the client. There's certain clients that it might take, several months to write. But for the discovery part, there isn't so much of a discovery. Someone might just have a plot that they want me to write through, and I'll just take that plot and I'll write with it. So it is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. So no real ideation. They're coming to you pretty much with the idea already kind of fully formed, I want to say. Of course, it's not fully formed because the book's not written. But they know where they want to go with it, right?
Right. Pretty much all you really need to start with is an idea. I have worked on plots for a client, and that will take a little bit longer. I have, helped them brainstorm different plot points and things like that. And obviously that's an additional thing. But a lot of my clients come to me and they have a plot fully formed, and they want somebody who's just going to write the whole thing. And that might take, a month at most, depending on what genre it is, depending on if it has any world building and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I do at least one book a month I do at least 12 books a year.
Wow. So what is the word count on average? I know this is probably not going to be the same for all, but what kind of word count are you working with?
Probably between 50,000 and 80,000 words.
Oh. So that's about your average size book, right? A little longer when you're talking 80,000.
It depends on the
genre. That'd be more like So what kind of genre do you mostly find yourself in? Are you doing more young adult as well because you are a young adult author, or do you just kind of run the whole gamut?
I pretty much do everything. I do young adult, obviously. There's a lot of a market for that. But there is a big market for romance books. So I do romance books as well. Fantasy, things like that. Those end up being a little bit more involved. But I do get those as well. So I pretty much do everything fiction. And I don't really have any preferences. I like to read it all, so I like to write it all.
There you go. Do you find yourself getting distracted when you're writing it? Because if it's a great idea, I would assume I would just sit there and contemplate all the myriad possibilities of how the story would end. Do you find yourself doing that?
No. I mean, I will be writing at any one time. I will be writing like 5 or 6 different projects. So, and they're all different. They're all different genres, so I'll have to actually kind of be able to juggle those different things, and if they're in different stages of development, like one of them might be in plotting and one of them might be in revision and things like that. So it's just kind of balancing all the different ones and making sure that you have deadlines and getting, and, adhering to those deadlines.
Hmm. So is it just the author coming to you, or is there sometimes an agent or a publisher involved in the process as well?
It's usually the author. I do
Hmm.
have a couple of agencies that have come to me and wanted to work with me. When I first started, it was my agent that actually got me a few projects, because I do have a fiction agent that sold my books. So,
Hmm.
but mostly it's the
Awesome.
author that will come to me. And often it's an author who, or a new author who maybe has something already written, maybe 30,000 words of something, and they're just not sure where to go. And that's why I like to
Hmm.
call myself a book doctor as well, because I can take a book and I can tell them where they're going wrong, and then I can help them get on track again. So
Hmm.
it's not just ghostwriting. Like, I don't just take books that are um, completely, haven't been written yet. I can also do books that are, somebody's maybe struggling with trying to figure out how to take the next
Hmm.
step.
Definitely. Yeah. Because, sometimes I've suffered from sagging middle syndrome
Oh yeah.
where, I know kind of where I need to go and where I started, but, just getting that bridge from start to the end
Yeah.
completed seems to always be a challenge for me. And sometimes I feel I have to put a lot of dialogue in there, of course, to explain things in the background. So, do you deal with sagging middle syndrome? And if so, how do you tackle that problem?
The only way really to do it is to go through it, to just keep writing through it. Um, there it often feels like you're never going to get to the end of it, especially when you get to that like 1/4 of the way through to like halfway through, because you're kind of going into the tunnel and you don't see the light at the end of it. But once you get halfway
Yeah.
through and you start saying, okay, like there's an end. And I always keep that in mind. There's an end coming up. If I get halfway through, then it's all uphill from there. I mean, it's all downhill from there. So it should be easier. So yeah, so as once I get halfway through, then I know that I can kind of power through and finish it up. But it's just knowing that that's coming, and after writing like 100 books, I pretty much know now that's what's coming up. So that's what I look forward to.
Yeah, I envy you, but I haven't written that many books yet. So I guess I haven't quite attained that level of confidence yet.
No, well, I don't think actually you ever get like confidence where you're like, oh, I'm so awesome, I'm great at this. I don't have that yet.
Wow. But I mean, it sounds like you know what you're doing, which is amazing. And I
No,
still envy that as well.
I don't know. I think as writers, we're all very sensitive, and we all don't have a huge amount of confidence. So yeah. So I somebody was actually saying to me that like, oh, you must be so confident because you've written so many books, and I said, no, not really.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, it's something new that I learned. I
yeah,
never would have thought
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So you mentioned with fantasy, and if there's something more involving world building, that it takes some more time. Is there more back and forth with the author on those kind of projects?
Um, yes, there is. I would say I do a lot of back and forth, like email and stuff like that. But a lot of times they already have the world, kind of set, and I might go to them and say, okay, well, this isn't really working. You need to probably fix this, change this thing around or something like that, because it doesn't seem like that's working too well in your book. But it's not a huge amount. Usually, people have their world pretty set and ready to go. So.
Hmm. And do you find you're always having to kind of set out rules for kind of most of everything that's going on, like your standard stuff? Like take for example the Pixar movies. There was Bugs Life, Finding Nemo, and we'll go with Toy Story as well. But obviously they're establishing that there is a world, a
Yeah,
microcosm within this, and there's always that scene I can remember specifically in Finding Nemo and in Bugs Life where they're just walking through a city,
yeah,
and so they're taking what we would assume to be normal and they're just kind of putting that into what their world would look like.
right.
So do you find that there's kind of those rules that you have to go with, that if there's a lamp, then the lamp has to look like this. If there's this kind of government, then the government has to kind of work this way. Is that true for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've written fantasy before, and science fiction and things like that. So it's all pretty much the same. So yeah, so definitely.
Oh, awesome. So you had also mentioned Stephen King as your favorite author.
Yeah.
Is there other authors that you really just enjoy reading and you think they do a great job, specifically with world building? Because I'm also a sci-fi nerd. But authors like that.
Um, well, I can't even think of any at this point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you just read too many, right?
Yeah, I read everything. Mostly I don't really read authors so much as I read different novels and stuff like that. I'm always getting like new novels that come out, especially young adult, because I write young adult and that's my thing, and I like to just keep up with it. So I'm always reading young adult books, and usually I'm getting a lot of new books that just came out. But I read mostly like a novel that sounds interesting as opposed to, oh, this is an author that I like.
Hmm. True. Yeah. Well, even with Stephen King, you mentioned The Stand is a great book that you keep coming back to,
Yeah.
and I've read that. I liked it, but for me, to be honest, it was a little long-winded for me. I felt Stephen King got a little long-winded there.
Yeah.
But some of his other stuff, like Joyland, I really loved reading that.
Yeah.
Apt Pupil and Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
For some reason, those resonated with me more. So I kind of like his stuff in that vein, that genre, instead of terrifying little kids and ending the world. I preferred more that speed. So then, when it comes to those kind of books, young adult books, is there a specific type of, I guess, story that you're drawn to and that you like to read a lot?
Well, I love dystopian books. And when like the Hunger Games came out, I was like, oh, thank goodness this is, becoming popular because I really like this. And I loved reading that. And so I wrote one actually that was published. And then, it's funny because with young adult, like certain things, like when I first got published, paranormal romance was the thing. Twilight had just come out. It
Oh
was a
yeah.
big deal. And I actually was like, I can write one of those. And so I did. And it ended up being my first novel being published. But then that started, like, nobody would buy vampires. Vampires was totally out. And so then it went to dystopian. And then I wrote one of those. And then that ended up being, published. And then I went to like thrillers started being more popular, and so I started writing thrillers. But it wasn't that I was following a trend, it's just because I love everything. I really do. I really like reading just about anything, and I like writing anything too, and it gives me a way to kind of explore something that maybe I've never done before. And I know that there's certain authors and a lot of authors are like that, where they just want to write one thing, but that's never been me. I like to write everything. And there's very few things that I will not write. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I really like, now I'm really into horror and writing thrillers. Um, and those are the books that I'm actually publishing now, and those are, I love it. I just, I love being able to write those things. So if it goes back to paranormal romance and that's what I sell again, that's fine, because I like those books. So it doesn't really matter what the trend is.
True.
Yeah.
True. So anything and everything. That's
Yeah, pretty much.
awesome. So then, I guess on average, how many books a year are you able to read and finish?
To read, I probably don't read as much as I should be reading. I probably read about two books a month. And
Yeah, that's probably two more than what I'm reading right now. I'm not doing very well this year, as far as reading is concerned.
yeah, yeah. Well, I probably read about 2 books a month. I'm trying to get through certain ones because I borrowed books from certain people and I have to give them back. And I feel bad when I hold on to the books for a long time. But yeah, I have a stack by my bed that's like really, really getting tall. So I have to.
Me too. Me too. I've started about 5 of the books that are on my nightstand,
Yeah,
and I
I do
think
the
there's about
same
12.
thing. You start it
Yeah.
and then you never
So,
finish it. And I'm like,
hmm
I'm gonna go
and
back
I
to
had
that.
yeah, I had finished Resilience by Eric Greitens, and then I put that in my car so that I would be more likely to read it
Hmm.
because I'm in my car a lot. But then, I find that I'm still halfway through that, and I haven't finished that for the second time. I'm like, this is bad. I've finished this book already. It should be easier to finish it the second time. But
No.
what are you gonna do? So, mostly when an author comes to me for a business book, some sort of business expert, they really see kind of the book as a marketing potential, some sort of platform for them to expand their brand and everything.
Mhm.
With a fiction book, are authors still able to do that, or is it really more, a hobby? They really want to get the story out there. They want to share it with the world. What is kind of their motivation?
There's a whole bunch of different motivations. I get just about everyone. Some people are actually established authors, and uh, they want to write a book. They have so many people listening, like reading their books, and they need to get another book out. So they just want more books out, and they're usually self-published authors that need to put out a bunch of books. And so those people mostly have the plot all ready to go, and they know about writing, and they know how it takes. And usually those are romance novels. And they're very easy to work with. And then you get the people that have had a book in their mind for maybe 20 years. They just don't know how to tell it, but the story has been kicking around their head for 20 years, and they don't know how to tell it, and they need somebody, a professional, to tell it for them, and they maybe just don't have the time or the talent to do it. So that's where I come in, and I help them to write it, and that can be a little bit more involved because they don't really know the process of writing. So really my job is basically finding out like the necessity as far as like what they what they need, and doing what they what they need. So working against their needs, I guess. So
Hmm. Yeah, and do you help with the marketing at all, with your authors?
you would you would think so, because that's where I come from. I worked for 20 years in marketing, but I do not do it marketing at all. Pretty much, I help them if they want to find out about different publishing options, like as far as exploring traditional and self-publishing, which one they would rather do. Then I look into that for them and help them with that, and help them like prepare like a submission package and things like that. Uh,
Oh, so then what goes into a submission package? I would assume some sort of query letter template and maybe a list of agents who are right for the project.
There. I can recommend agents for them as far as which ones might be good. I can help with them with the query. Usually, agents will want to see for the first 5 or 10 pages, and so I will help them work on those and make sure that those are perfect. And then a synopsis, 1-page synopsis. Usually that entails the package there.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, because I was assuming it'd be like a proposal where you got to have like something like 12 sections and you got to put it out there. So it sounds like a fiction proposal is much easier to do.
Yeah. Well, for proposal, as far as traditional publishing goes, you cannot do a proposal, really. If you're a new author, it's not a good idea to do a proposal. You have to have the whole book written.
Mm-hmm.
Nonfiction, you can have a a small proposal, but basically for fiction, you need to have the entire book done.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, yeah, because I was talking with another ghostwriter. She'd been doing ghostwriting for 30 years, and she said agents get hit up all the time with somebody who says, "I have a good
Yeah.
idea,"
Oh yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just have
They
the
just
idea.
have
They
the
don't
idea.
have
That's
it
it. That's
completed.
all you need, the
Yeah.
idea.
Mhm. Yeah. It's always a great idea, but it doesn't matter until it's
No,
done. I keep going back to Seth Godin on this because Seth Godin says the only good art is the art that's shipped, that's done, and it's been put
yeah,
out there. Even if it's quote unquote bad art,
yeah,
it's still done, and that's what
right.
matters. Because
Well,
yeah,
no,
you can have a great
I
idea.
agree with that because even they say that, if you've previously been published, you can sell on proposal. Um, and my agent always says, if you want to sell it on proposal, just write your first 50 pages and we'll send it out to publishers. And nowadays I'm like, you know what? No, I want to write the whole thing because I want them to see how it's going to play out. If they don't see how it's going to play out, they might not want it. So I want to give it its best shot, especially because it's very difficult to get published these days. It's getting more and more and more competitive. So yeah, so I'd rather write the whole thing and make sure they know what they're getting.
Hmm. Definitely. And I've heard also with the pandemic going on that there's a lot more submissions being presented just because people have time, of course, to finish the book and then try and find an agent. And especially in the self-publishing world, they were like, well, now's the time because I've got time on my hands.
Yeah.
So is that true from your perspective?
Oh yeah. I've been noticing there's a lot of coronavirus, pandemic fiction people
Oh,
have
yeah.
been trying to write. But no, I've been getting so many people contacting me. They finally have the time to work on their book, and so now they need help with it. And it's been a very busy time for me. So that's good.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah. Glad to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, so then let's step back a little bit because you had said you were a published young adult author, and then you decided to go into ghostwriting as well. You said your agent had approached you about the idea.
My agent had not approached me about it, but I had actually sold my first book in 2007, and my first book came out in 2009. And since then, I had a book come out every year, and it was a great schedule. Unfortunately, though, you never know with the traditional publishing when you're going to be paid. And so if you have a book come out every year, and even if you get a six-figure advance for it, and you're getting paid over a period of 3 years, which is how long it takes sometimes for a book to come out, you're really not making that much money. so, so I was having a lot of trouble, trying to figure out like how I would make it work. If I could quit my full-time job, which was always the goal, and I couldn't do it with just traditional publishing. So I was looking for ways to do it, especially I had around the recession of 2008 or 2009, I lost my job actually, and I was 9 months pregnant when I lost my job.
Oh,
so,
oh my gosh.
so I had a book coming out too. My first book was coming out at that point in time. So, and I was trying to write the second book. And so it was just a complete nightmare. And so I was trying to figure out what I would do with my life. And it took a few years because they kept telling me at the publisher that they only wanted one book from me a year because otherwise I would dilute my brand. So I didn't even know I had a brand.
Interesting.
I was shocked. I was like, what?
It must have been a really potent brand.
So anyways, they just didn't want extra books from me. So I was like, okay, well, what do I do? Because I'm a very fast writer. And so then I had like looked into different places where were looking for writers, and I found one romance writer who was looking for writers, and then I went on Upwork actually, and I actually found a New York Times bestseller who was looking for somebody to write a book for her, and
On
that was a very
Upwork.
rare
Wow.
thing because Upwork does not have so many great jobs.
Yeah.
So
I've heard some horror stories. Yeah.
so I was shocked to find that but there's gems in there. And so I found that, and I started with that. And then I started telling people I'm doing this, if anyone needs help. And then it just word of mouth spread, and it just got a little crazy where I ended up I really wanted to quit my full-time job because I was, what I was aiming to do was replace my salary, and I ended up doubling my salary the first year, or no, maybe the second year. So I ended up quitting my full-time job, and then that was 2 years ago, and I've just been ghostwriting ever since. So it's been interesting. But yeah, everyone told me when I first started writing that you should not go into writing. You won't make any money as a writer, especially as a fiction writer. They told me, don't go into, don't major in English, don't major in writing, don't take creative writing classes because it's just not worth it. And I loved it. I was like, oh, but I love doing it. I used to be the person who everyone was going to the beach and I was sitting there with my computer writing. I mean, I was just always writing. And they told me that, not to, go into marketing. That's the thing you want to do. So I did. And I was in it for 20 years and I absolutely hated it. I'm kept the whole time I was looking for a way to get out of it. And it just ended up happening that, because I loved it so much and I just kept working at it, that things ended up falling into place. So I feel like if you really are passionate about something and you keep working at it, then eventually, the money will come afterwards. So, and you can make a career out of it. So Definitely. All those people that told me that I would never make any money writing fiction, I can laugh at them now.
Karma.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like to be a guest on the Career Challenges podcast? Go to careerchallengespodcast.com to find out how. While you're there, check out other episodes and download them through Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. The Career Challenges podcast is hosted by me, Kyle Weckerly. I'm a certified professional ghostwriter who works with business thought leaders and industry experts to write polished manuscripts, assess their publishing options, and create book marketing plans. I've worked with consultants, high-ticket salespeople, coaches, speakers, C-level executives, and business owners. My authors have worked for USAA, Vistage, Booz Allen Hamilton, Austin Technology Council, and Twitch. My authors know that writing a book will help them change the world. They know that the story they tell will create that change. So they want to write a book to serve as a platform for their marketing endeavors. They know a published book will help them secure more speaking gigs, market their expertise, promote a product or service, and more. So reach out to Kyle Weckerly at weckerlywriter.com to start your publishing journey. Maybe you're not ready to start that journey just yet, but you do know that you want to write a book. So where to begin? Well, if you're ready, go to weckerlywriter.com to download 101 questions to ask before writing your book. This will help you get started and will offer guidance on the next steps to turn your ideas, experience, and actionable knowledge into a completed manuscript. Just visit weckerlywriter.com to get your free copy today. That's weckerlywriter.com. weckerlywriter.com. And now, back to the Career Challenges podcast. So with your marketing job and you deciding to go into ghostwriting full time, did you have a plan when you decided, okay, this is how I'm going to do it? And if you did, what was that? I guess what were the steps that you had set up?
Well, I hated my job so much. It was just terrible. I was commuting like 2 hours each day and it was just awful.
Oh my gosh.
And I had just taken that job. So I was there for maybe a year. But the whole time I was also working as a ghostwriter. So I was working both jobs and I was constantly just grinding all the time. And I kept saying to myself, I'm just going to try to replace my income. And, if I make a little bit less, it's okay because, it'll cover the commute and all that stuff that I won't have to pay for. So I was just trying to do that. And then I kept saying to myself, what if the clients dropped off and I didn't get any more clients? What would I do then? And I was just so scared for the longest time. And eventually my job got to be the point where I was miserable. I was just absolutely miserable. I got into a car accident on the way to work, and I was like, what am I doing this for? I hate my job. I need to do something else. And so I said, you know what? It'll be better, even if even if I have to work and do horrible writing jobs that I don't like, at least I'll be writing, and I'll be at home, and I'll be writing, So I just did it. I just said, okay, I'm going to give my 2 weeks notice. I gave my 2 weeks notice, and I have never had a problem in 2 years. I've never had a problem not having, work. So it's all kind of fallen into place.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's very inspiring.
Yeah.
With your young adult titles and your writing there, what were some of those motivations when you first started to write a book? When you decided, okay, I'm going to write a book, and this is what it's going to be about. Was it an idea that you had been sitting on for 20 years, like you mentioned earlier, or was it something else?
I was working at a magazine at that point. This was before I got laid off from that job, and I was pretty happy at the job, but I was looking for something else, and I knew that writing was something that I always loved to do, but I hadn't done it in about 10 years. I had given it up after college because college kind of killed my love for writing. So for about 10 years, I was not writing anything. And then I started, going online, and I found an agent that actually lived really close to me. Most agents live in New York, and this one actually lived near me in Allentown. And she had a blog, and it was a very interesting blog. She talked about all the stuff that I knew about, and she was into young adult books, and I'd always been in love with young adult books. So she talked about them all the time, and she was very young, and she had 3 kids, and she was talking about how she was selling all these books to Random House and stuff like that. And I'm like, I love this girl. She's just like, she would be my best friend if we knew each other. I know that we would get along really well. So I started writing a book and just following her. And then this was back when LiveJournal was a thing, and people were on LiveJournal. And so people would be getting represented by her, and she'd be selling their books. And I ended up being critique partners with one of the girls who was actually represented by her. And we, were going back and forth and, critiquing our work. And she said after a while, she's like, you know what? I think my agent would love your book. And I was like, oh yes, please introduce us. So she introduced us, and she actually did love my book. And so she signed me, and which is amazing because I never had to send out any queries. And I know a lot of people query, and I never had to. So I was lucky, very lucky with that. But it did require a lot of, networking, because I was networking with all these people and trying to get in there. And she did not, my agent, though she loved my first book, she did not sell my first book. She sold my second book because while she was trying to sell the first book, she's like, well, what else do you have? That's always the question. What else do you have? Because, there's so much time that goes in between selling books. I mean, there's just so much time. So you better be working on something else. So I was writing my first book, which was Fairy Tale. At the time, and this was right before all the fairy stuff. I just hit at the right time. It was right before all the fairy stuff exploded, and she said, "Oh, well, that sounds really good. It's about a girl who finds out that her boyfriend is a fairy." She said, "That sounds it's a good hook. Write it." So I was like, "Okay, I'm going to write it." So I wrote it in like a period of a month. And I actually remember the exact day that it happened because it was so exciting. But she told me, I know she sent it out on submission in September, and then on like November 1st at like 2:00, she called me at work, and she was like, "Oh, I just want to let you know that Random House offered a preempt." And I was like, I don't even know what that is, but Random House. Yeah. And she told me that preempt is that it's something that that a publisher offers, so that there will be no other offers on the table. So it stops it from going to auction. So they wanted it so bad that they offered more money for it. So that was like the happiest day of my life. I was actually at work and I was crying hysterically because I had sold my book and it was my dream come true. And I will still always remember that as like the greatest day of my life. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you need to write that story now and publish it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and since then I had another book come out every year. So I've been really lucky with that. So, yeah.
Good. And it hasn't diluted your brand at all, has it?
No, not really.
True. So we connected on LinkedIn through Jennifer Locke, a previous guest of mine.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious as well, because LinkedIn, I feel it's morphing just with the pandemic and everything, and there's more people on it. So it is becoming a little more like Facebook was, but I still see it as this professional platform.
Yeah, definitely.
We're still professionals there. We're networking. We're trying to find connections and all that for professional reasons. And so I'm curious, as a fiction ghostwriter, how do you utilize that platform?
I don't use it as much as a nonfiction do, because it really, nonfiction writers are doing business books and things like that. And there are not as many fiction authors on it. I get most of my work and most of my networking happens on Facebook. Because there's lots of fiction groups there. There's a lot of ghostwriting groups. There's lots of people there that are trying to write a book and, just hobby people. So most of my work most of my networking happens on Facebook still. So not so much LinkedIn.
True.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. It's just for me, Facebook, it feels more like still like a party scene.
Yeah.
Or,
and I think that's what fiction is. It's a party.
True. Yeah. Good point. Because, Facebook came out when I was in college, which is kind of dating me. And so for me, it was a way to connect with my friends, and after college, hopefully stay connected with them, which of course never really works. So I guess to me, in my mind, Facebook is just where, my friends hang out, and LinkedIn is where I go, all dressed up professionally and like, let's talk about your book.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. When I was working, in marketing, in the marketing job I hated, I was on LinkedIn for that all the time. So that's why I have the profile, is actually for that. And, I modified it obviously for my fiction ghostwriting, but I don't really get a huge amount of people, connecting with me for projects. Maybe a couple, but not a huge amount.
So then, we're getting close here to the end of our recording time, but I do want to ask kind of what has been, one of your most favorite projects, maybe not the favorite, but just like a favorite project you like to talk about, or one that you felt went really well. And why did it go so well?
Geez. See, I have, every project that I'm working on at the time that I'm working on, I'm like, oh, that's great. Because I love writing so much, and I love helping people write that they have inside them and they just don't know how to get out. It's just such a fulfilling job to be able to do that and to present something to somebody that they're like, that's exactly what I wanted. But I do think that there are a couple projects where the people come back to me and they've had this idea in their mind for so long, and they just never thought that they could realize it. And to have it come out and to be exactly what they want and to be so happy, that just makes me so happy too. I did have one client that I'm actually working with right now, and she wrote a book, and she had it about halfway done, and it was about her relationship with her father, who had passed away. And she just couldn't get it the right way, the way that she wanted it to be. And I wasn't even thinking about it when I sent her the first chapter, but I sent her the first chapter on Father's Day. And she read it, and she was like crying hysterically when she emailed me. She was like, this is so perfect. And thank you so much. You put into words what I wanted to say. that made me feel so good, to be able to do that for her.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I
humbling.
mean, and even just in writing fiction, you never think that you're going to, affect people that way, but it does. So that's
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So then we'll go to the flip side of that. You don't have to name names. You can be vague. But what has there been a client or two where it's like, wow, it cannot get any worse than this
I,
experience? Has there been experiences like that for you?
I did have one client that I was finally unable to work with. And I usually can work with everybody because I'm very flexible. And if they want to work on Google Docs with following along as I'm writing and they want to see what I'm doing, that's
Oh
fine.
my
I'm
gosh.
okay with it. I'm okay with if they want to just give me it and let me run with it. I can do that as well. I can do pretty much anything in between, but somebody had actually called me and he wanted me to stay on the phone with him and write the book while I was on the phone with him.
So like you're saying the words as you're typing them
like
out?
we're like brainstorming the words together as we're writing. And I said to him, I don't know how that would work. I really just don't. I mean, I do need kind of alone time. I don't really actually know any author
Yeah.
that could write that way. I really need in my head instead of going over them with you on the phone. And I could imagine it going on for years writing that way. And I just finally told him I couldn't work that way. So I'm very careful to tell people that I'm not as flexible. I'm not that flexible, but I try to be flexible. So, yeah.
True. Yeah. There's only so far we can go.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be as flexible as possible because I know that everybody's different, and I can pretty much create any way. I mean, I've been doing this forever, and I'm constantly like thinking of different ways to write things. And when I'm walking around, I'm actually coming up with prose as I'm walking around, and I know people don't do that in normal life. So,
Well, us ghostwriters, we do
we
that. I
do.
was thinking about story ideas earlier
Yeah,
today too.
yeah,
So
okay,
yeah,
yeah, but most people don't do that, so we're just weird. But
I can live with that. I can
yeah,
live
so
with that.
I can do it any way that they want to because this is uncomfortable for them, and I try to make it as comfortable as possible for them. But sometimes I just can't. Sometimes I do have limits.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know. So I've had some previous authors on my podcast, and they've all been nonfiction authors. And I've asked them, if you were to write a fiction book, what would it be? So this time I get to flip that. And so since you are a fiction ghostwriter, if you were to write a nonfiction piece, what would it be about and why?
Non.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it would be because the only thing that I really am good at is writing. I mean, because I started writing when I was 5 years old. I mean, my first book when I was 5 years old. That is the thing that I just when I started when I learned how to read and I learned how to write right after that. I just assumed that once you learn how to read books, you write books. I mean, I just thought it was just the normal
Sure.
thing. So I started doing it. And it was only like a few years later that people told me that was weird. I feel like that's the only thing that I really, really know. And that's probably what I would write is, how to write a book. But I almost feel like I know it almost too well that I wouldn't be able to get it down. So I would need a nonfiction ghostwriter to help me write it.
There we go. I'm in. I'm in. No, so it would be like a Cyn Balog on writing,
Yeah.
like Stephen King's
Oh
on
yeah,
writing.
that
Cyn
book is
Balog on
great.
writing. There we go. There we go. So yeah, and the way he does it, and it's become such a staple now of writing that I remember somebody was trying to put together a article on writing resources, and she put it out there and said, "I need help writing this article. Do you have any suggestions for good books to read besides Stephen King's on writing?" It's like,
Yeah.
well, there you go. That would have been my answer, but
Yeah.
I think I said that the Heath brothers made to stick, which was another really great example of how to tell stories. Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, so we're just about out of time here, Cyn. But what's next for you? What's on the horizon that you're really excited about and you want to talk about here on the show?
Well, I'm trying to work on a horror novel that I'm hoping that my agent is going to sell. That I'm hoping will be coming to a bookstore near you in the next
Mm.
3 years, because that's how long it takes.
Wow.
But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. And I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to get it completely done and not just be a proposal, because I want it to be, I want them to see how, because all of my horror novels, thriller novels have twist endings. And with a twist ending, you don't know if it's going to work until you actually read it. So that's why I want to kind of have it completely done. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing. And, more ghostwriting. I'm booked forever. So yeah, so I'm working on more ghostwriting. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
it. I'm glad to hear it. Well, Cyn Balog, thank you so much for being on the Career Challenges podcast with me
Yeah.
today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Career Challenges podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Career Challenges podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Visit careerchallengespodcast.com for more information. And if you really like me, then you'll write a review. And don't forget to pick up your free copy of 101 Questions to Ask Before Writing Your Book by visiting weckerlywriter.com. That's WECKERLYWRITER.com.